Yeah, welcome to another exciting episode on our YouTube channel. Just because of Manchester United, you know what we do on the channel is everything Manchester United. We talk about transfers, we talk about results, we preview matches, we review the games, and on today's episode, we'll be looking at the season in general, the just concluded 2024-25 season for Manchester United. Before we begin, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you are a Man United fan and you're not following this channel, you're on the wrong side of the eye, basically. So let's just begin. As United fans, we all know how the season began with a lot of hope because obviously we won the FA Cup last season, despite of going through a lot of troubles. We felt like we couldn't have gone lower than what happened last season because it was our worst season in the Premier League as at that time. Ten Hag won us the FA Cup. The players were bouncing. We won that game 2-1. Two of our academic graduates, scored in the final, Garnacho and Mourinho, and we felt like yes, from here upwards and onwards. But nobody expected the sort of tumultuous season we're going to have in 2024-25, and now that it's done, and we'll be reviewing it in totality, trying to look at what went wrong, what went right, the few things that went right, obviously, and try to pick up the pieces. But just to begin the season, got in a couple of players, and everybody was bouncing because we got the likes of Manuel Ugarte, we brought in Matthias De Ligt, brought in Jose Mazraoui, brought in Joshua Zexi and a couple other guys, and we felt like yes, definitely we're playing for something because the club categorically backed Ten Hag and looking to build on the little success that we had in the season prior. After we've won the FA Cup and found our way back into Europe via the Europa League. Season started on its own. The first game of the season, I felt we played really well. That was the Community Shield against Manchester City. We played really well, didn't take our chances, which for me just painted a picture of how the season was going to go because a lot of times this season we played really well but just failed to take our chances. If you watch the game against Manchester City in the Community Shield, we were fantastic, an offside goal from Bruno, I think. We hit the bar one-on-one Marcus Rashford, we missed a couple of chances. Garnacho came in, he scored, Manchester City equalized, and eventually, defeated us on penalties. Nobody knew, that was going to be the story of the season. But if you saw our performance in that game, you were a bit elated and, confident of what was going to happen in the coming season. We lost the Community Shield and nobody really batted an eye because obviously it's the Community Shield, but we played really well in that game. And the season started, the first game of the season against Fulham, played well again, struggled to get goals. Eventually, our summer signing, Joshua Zexi, came off the bench and got the winner. And we felt like, yeah, we're going to look like a really strong and solid team going into the 2024-25 season. But the reality dawned on us. I think we lost our next game against Brighton, if I'm not wrong. I know we lost the following one against Liverpool also, if I'm not wrong, 3-0. Lost to Brighton 2-1, lost to Liverpool 3-0. And then I think we defeated Southampton away 3-0. That was the game Onana saved the penalty. We could have been behind in that game. We started very poorly. Southampton were on top of us for huge parts of the first half. And, they lost the penalty. And then we were able to, capitalize on that. Goals from, I think, Matthias De Ligt scored the first goal. If I can remember very well, I remember that Rashford got a goal in that game and Garnacho got the third one. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you could look at our performances in the beginning of the season and it wasn't really, and I'm talking about the Premier League now, it wasn't really exciting anymore. It wasn't the same team we saw take on Manchester City in the Community Shield or the same thing we saw, happen on Fulham's defense in the first game of the season. As the season went by, the results and the performances dwindled, and it was a bit saddening because we as Man United fans, you feel like we have the quality of players, we have the Bruno Fernandes's, the Marcus Rashfords of this world, men who look like a solid talent, and just come off a great season, represented England in the Euros, and we thought, okay, this is for him, the next step for him to take. You had Garnacho, who had an alright season last season. We had experienced guys. We had Lisandro Martinez, who just won the Copa America with Argentina. We had internationals on our team. We had Lindelof, who's the captain of the Swedish national team. We look at Diogo Dalot. So we felt like, yeah, these guys needed to galvanize, or they could galvanize themselves and get a result for us. But as the season went by, as time went by, it was baffling how poorly we were set up by Ten Hag. It wasn't shocking to me when it was sacked on the 29th of October after 2.5 seasons with Man United. But you looked at the result and it was nothing to write home about because the club We were languishing in 14th, and I just won, I think, 4 or 14 games, if I'm not wrong. We're 14th in the Premier League, and I had won 4 or 14 games in all competition. The first few games in the Europa League, we couldn't win. We drew our opening 3 games in the Europa League, and it was understandable that I needed to go. And I think everybody, there was a consensus sort of feeling across the Man United fan base that, yeah, it was his time. It was time for the Dutchman to go. But a bit of hope came when the news broke out that we're going to be employing one of the best young managers across Europe, Ruben Amorim, and it wasn't. There was no reason to falter. There was no reason to be a bit skeptical because you saw what he did with the Sporting side, and a lot of people could say, okay, maybe Sporting is not one of the top 5 European leagues, but you looked at what he did in Europe. Knocking Arsenal out of the Europa League a couple seasons ago, beating Manchester City by whitewash, in this same 2024 season in Champions League. So there was that bit of hope that, yeah, maybe this is the man to take us to the next level. I think he was appointed on the 1st of November 2024, but he didn't resume until the 11th of November. So the time when he resumed, the guys were away on international window. There was a lot of fuss about some players traveling, blah, blah, blah. But he settled the thing, and his first game, he drew to Ipswich Town. I think it was 24th of November, if I'm not wrong. Drew to Ipswich Town 1-1, and we won his next 2 games, one in the Europa League and also 4-0, win over Everton in the Premier League. But before then, honorable mention to Ruud van Nistelrooy, who sort of steadied the ship and changed a bit of the vibe around the club. And it looked like, yeah, these guys really respected him, being an honorable legend of Manchester United. And there was that happiness again, there was that bouncy feeling again. Amorim came in, of the first 3 games, he won 2 and he drew 1. But something notable that I remember them saying was people shouldn't get too happy because the storm was going to come. But my word, did the storm come? it was way more than a storm. It was a tsunami because you saw what happened over the next few months. We were unable to win games. Man United did not win back to back throughout the whole of the 2024-25 Premier League season. You saw where we ended. You saw what happened. You saw the way the players were playing. Our top striker, Rasmus Højlund, could only garner 4 goals in the Premier League. I don't think any of our players were in double digits in the Premier League alone. Once again, Bruno Fernandes was heads and shoulders above everybody. There were injuries. Lisandro Martinez ACL injury, even Dalot that is always available going injured at a point in the season. It was just a terrible, terrible season. This is one season that I'll be very, very quick to forget because of everything that transpired in it. We're steady. Amorim came, everyone was happy. The Carabao Cup were knocked out by Tottenham in the quarterfinals. I remember that very bizarre game, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Errors from both goalkeepers. Fraser Foster on the side for Tottenham, Otto Bayenda on the side for Man United. It was just errors galore. And we're knocked out of the Carabao Cup just like that, 4-3 in a 7-goal thriller. And that was that. And you look at the FA Cup also, we had just defeated Arsenal in the first round on penalties. Beautiful, brilliant game. Sort of showed Amorim's technicality level, having to even go at Arsenal at the Emirates with one man down for over 60 something minutes. It was something, and eventually we won that game on penalties, and I was really happy. And I felt like, okay, that feeling came back again. But eventually we were knocked out of the FA Cup in the 5th round by Fulham at home on penalties. How ironic, the gods of football. We're beaten by Fulham at home on penalties. I think we did really well in that game. They got the first goal. Bruno Fernandes, I think, drew us level, and we lost on penalties, and it was remaining just the Premier League and the Europa League to salvage our season. And I was really happy with what Amorim did in the Europa League. And that was something I couldn't wrap my head around because there was a huge contrast from the same Man United side that was playing in the Premier League and the guys that were playing in the Europa League. It was the same players, the same set of players, but it was just a mentality change, and the style of play was way different. I hope going into the off season, I hope Amorim can figure out why it was like that. But in the Europa League, we're a different side. We looked reborn. After that drawing the first 3 games, we went on a run. We finished the whole league phase unbeaten. Round of 16 unbeaten, quarterfinals unbeaten, semi-finals unbeaten. And you looked at what happened. Dispatch Real Sociedad easily at Old Trafford. There was that crazy, crazy game against Lyon. At Old Trafford, also won that. Literally dealt with La Liga's best defense in Athletic Club 7-1 on aggregate, and then on to the finals. And we all know what happened in the final. Eventually lost to Tottenham. Our fourth defeat to Ange Postecoglou side in the 2024-25 season. We lost to a Spurs side 4 times in one season. My word. It was annoying, it was embarrassing, it was sad. How do you lose to one team 4 times in a season? You know, But we lost that. For me, probably our biggest game in 10 years, and the boys just couldn't come up to the party. Lost the game, lost out on the opportunity to get back to the Champions League, lost out on £100 million to even help our finances, lost out on a lot of things. Winning the Europa League could have sort of like papered the cracks for this shambolic season that we had. But losing it, it was like the old spirit in the team was gone. You could see it. Amorim was sad. The players were bewildered. They were crying. But it's football. I don't think we played badly, but they got the goal and they sat down and they worked for them. And they defeated us in the Europa League. Then, but coming to the Premier League, you look at, and that's something I keep saying. That's something when I'm discussing with people, I'm like, I just cannot wrap my head around how we're that good in the Europa League. And we are so bad in the Premier League. We're getting beaten left, right, and centre. Wolves beat us home and away. West Ham beat us home and away. We struggled to salvage a draw against Everton at Goodison Park. Liverpool beat us at Old Trafford. We got a draw away at Anfield. Brighton beat us home and away. It was crazy. Even Southampton, thanks to Ahmad's brilliance, the hat trick, we could have lost to Southampton at Old Trafford. And you look at the whole season was littered with results like that, bad performances, lack of mentality, players not wanting to run, players not wanting to work hard, players not wanting to give that extra push. And it was the story of the whole 2024-25 season, and it was very evident in what we did, in how we played and how we outrun practically in almost all the games in the Premier League. And you can see it, 38 matches played in the Premier League, 42 points. Man United, 42 points in the Premier League. And it was a bit saddening because for another season, we finished with a negative goal difference, minus 10 goal difference, 42 points in the Premier League. Of 38 matches, we won just 11, we drew 9 matches, and we lost 18 games. Man United lost 18 games in the Premier League in the just concluded 2024-25 season. 18 games Man United lost. We drew 9, we won 11, we played 38 games, we had 42 points, and we had a negative minus 10 goal difference. And that just sums up, I don't need to say too much, it sums up the sort of season that we had, disappointing, shambolic, disgraceful season that we had. But I know the only, as a Man United fan, the only thing that gives me confidence going into the next season is now Amorim has no excuses. He's acclimatized to the league already. He's acclimatized to the league already. He knows what to expect going into the new season. Hopefully, the board can back him, help him get the sort of players he wants. We can see that Eriksen will no longer be with the side. Johnny Evans, obviously. Lindelof, obviously. There are reports of Garnacho. There are reports that Amorim told Garnacho to seek a new club. There are also rumors of Onana probably securing a move to Saudi Arabia. There's a report of Bruno Fernandes, who I don't think the club should let go. I think he loves the club. I think he's a great leader. I think he's our best player, obviously. I think should be held on to for a season or two more. So just, let's see what this Amorim team can be of. Reports everywhere. There's the great news of us already being very close to signing Matheus Nunes from Wolves. So we don't, like Beckham said, I listened to Beckham speak, we can't let go of our best players. That's Bruno, for example. We can't let go of him. We need to keep hold of him and try to get better players that can fit into this Amorim system. Now we know the system. We've seen patches of how he wants the players to play, especially in the Europa League. We saw how they want to play. You saw the game against Aston Villa last game of the season. On top of that game from beginning to end, you can see how he wants these guys to play. So now what is left for the board is to go and get players that can play in that style, players that can dominate, that can run. Because the 3-4-3 formation requires technicality and physicality. It requires strength, it requires speed. So you need to get players that are willing to do these things, players that want to willingly do these things. So if the manager says he doesn't want Garnacho, let him go. If he says he doesn't want Onana, let him go. Whoever he wants, get for him. Whoever he doesn't, let him go. Enough of the player power at Old Trafford. Enough of the mindset to spend money. Enough of the papering the cracks. It's enough. We are the biggest club in the world. We are the biggest club in England. It's high time we go back to where we're supposed to be. The last time we won the Premier League was 2013. That was 12 years ago. Last time we won the Champions League or even got to the final of the Champions League. Last time we got to the final of the Champions League was 2011. That's 14 years ago. The last time we won the Champions League was 2008. That's 17 years ago. So it's high time we stop papering the cracks. It's high time we consistently build build a style of play, consistently build the way we want to play, an identity. We've gotten some of the best coaches in the world, and they've come here and they've been sacked. Van Gaal, the Ten Hags, the Mourinho's, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Ragnick. These guys have come here and they've looked like a shadow of themselves. So it's high time the hierarchy at Old Trafford sit down, go back to the drawing board with the coach in mind. Draw out a plan, be strategic. Don't just go out there and spend. No, go out there and be strategic. Get the players that the managers want. Get the player that the manager wants. Get the players that will fit the style. Enough of trying to sign players just to sell jerseys. Enough of just looking at the commercial part of the club. Get in guys that will help. Because the funny thing about football is it's a business, we understand. But your success on the pitch equally translates to what you make commercially. You can see it with Manchester City. You can see it with Liverpool. Look at how much Liverpool are willing to spend in the summer transfer window because they've won. They've won. There's money in the bag. They've won a lot. You look at Barcelona, you look at Real Madrid. These teams can spend because they've won titles. That's where Man should be aiming to get to. Enough of the mediocrity. Basically, if I were to be asked to score our season 1 to 10, I'd say it's a little 2, and it's a 2 just because we got to the Europa League final. That's why I give it a 2. We were knocked out of the FA Cup in the 5th round. We were knocked out of the Europa League. Obviously, we got to the final of the Europa League. We were knocked out of the Carabao Cup in the quarterfinals. We finished 15th in the Premier League. 15th with a minus 10 goal difference with just 42 points. Past seasons, that was merely enough to get you across the line, in relegation. So basically, we just need to sort ourselves out. We need to look for a way to, get our business in early, sell the guys that the manager doesn't want, and get in players that the manager basically would like. All in all, I think Amorim knows what to do. I think now we have sort of like a setup of Jason Wilcox and Omar Berrada, where they have the experience of creating a very successful Manchester City team, obviously, and hopefully they can help us do that on the other side of Manchester, which is at Old Trafford. Going into the next season, I do not want to really disturb myself about who or what it is we are trying to get. I will come back to everything at the end of August to talk about, okay, this is what we've gotten, this is the way the team is going to be. But generally, it was a really disappointing 2024-25 season. Probably my lowest as a Man United fan. I literally had no mouth to speak when my friends were. I was getting bantered right, left, and center, and I know that was the same thing for a lot of Man United fans too. But hopefully, the 2025-26 season that begins in August, it breeds good fortune for us. Now we just 1 game a week. It's just the Premier League we are playing for. Maybe the players can sort of take it slowly and start to build. Use the summer, use the preseason to understand the way the coach wants to play and then build on to greater things. But generally, sad season, disappointing season. Hopefully, we never have this type of season again, and onward and onto greater things. Thank you for tuning in and watching the Just Because of Man United YouTube channel. Please do not forget, like, share, and subscribe. This page is everything about Man United. See you some other time.